They were once open-doors welcoming havens for American tourists, retirees, and digital nomads. But now, they've slammed shut. In 2025, 5 major countries just ripped the welcome mat out from under US passport holders, stripping away visa-free access that millions took for granted. From sun-soaked Caribbean escapes to economic powerhouses in the Middle East and Asia, the message is clear: America's travel privilege is unraveling. And this isn't some bureaucratic hiccup. These are deliberate, hard-hitting policy reversals fueled by national security fears, rising anti-American sentiment, tit-for-tat diplomatic retaliation, and economic desperation. We're talking about countries that once begged for American dollars, now demanding paperwork, background checks, and hefty visa fees before letting you in. What happened? Why now? And what does this mean for the future of US global mobility? American tourist arrivals have plummeted by up to 25%, in some places slashing billions from local economies. But the bigger story? These nations aren't just closing borders, they're sending a message. One that could redefine where Americans are welcomed or rejected across the world. This is more than travel inconvenience. It's a geopolitical wake-up call. So buckle up, because this countdown will reveal the top 5 countries that just kicked Americans off their visa-free list, and, trust us, some of these will shock you. From stunning islands to former allies, the global shift is real, and it's happening now. Is your favorite destination on the list? Are Americans losing their global freedom to travel? Number 5. Argentina, once one of South America's most welcoming countries for American travelers, offering visa-free entry to promote tourism and boost cultural exchange. But all of that changed in 2025. Faced with skyrocketing inflation topping a brutal 60% in 2024 and a population gripped by economic anxiety, the Argentine government made a bold, controversial move. It scrapped visa-free entry for Americans altogether. Now, U.S. tourists must apply for a formal tourist visa before setting foot in the country, a shift that has stunned travel analysts and frustrated would-be visitors. This isn't just about paperwork, it's about a deeper, more dangerous rift. Early data reveals a 25% plunge in American arrivals since the change was enacted. That's not a coincidence. It's a deliberate pivotal signal that Argentina is distancing itself from US-centric tourism and perhaps from broader Western influence. Why now? Government insiders say it's about rebalancing partnerships, but critics argue it's also about retaliation, a subtle middle finger to years of US economic pressure and diplomatic tension. And with fewer Americans flooding Buenos Aires or Patagonia, Argentina is feeling the ripple effects already. Local businesses, particularly those tied to the tourist trade, boutique hotels, tour operators, and cultural centers, are bearing the brunt. In a nation where tourism is a lifeline, this abrupt visa shift is like pulling the plug on an already struggling economy. Yet the government appears undeterred, gambling that a more regulated flow of visitors and perhaps a pivot to BRICS-aligned nations will offer more long-term sovereignty and less economic volatility. But will it work? Here's the bottom line. Americans now face barriers to a country that once welcomed them with open arms. Is this Argentina protecting its national identity or punishing US travelers to make a political point? Either way, the days of spontaneous American getaways to tango-infused streets and Andean peaks are over, and that's just the beginning. Number 4, Mexico. If you thought Mexico, America's backyard paradise, would always be visa-free for US citizens, think again. In a shocking and highly politicized move, Mexico implemented new visa requirements for American travelers in 2025, citing national sovereignty, migration equity, and border reciprocity. Translation? They're fed up. After years of dealing with political pressure, anti-immigrant rhetoric from US leaders, and mounting border tensions, Mexico just fired back hard. This is more than just a paperwork shuffle, it's a geopolitical statement. With a 15% decline in cross-border tourism in the first few months alone, the economic impact is starting to hit. For a country where tourism drives over 40% of its foreign exchange earnings, supporting everything from beach resorts in Cancun to cultural tourism in Oaxaca is a high-stakes move, so why risk it? Blame internal politics. With rising nationalist sentiment, an embattled administration under pressure to assert Mexico's sovereignty, and growing resentment toward the U.S. immigration stance, tightening the entry process for Americans became a symbolic gesturia tit-for-tat policy that flips the script. No more easy escapes across the southern border for carefree spring breakers or digital nomads. Mexico just made it clear entry is no longer a right, it's a privilege. For Americans used to strolling into Mexico with just a passport and a grin, this is a rude awakening. The new visa process involves pre-approval, documentation, and delays, and with U.S. travelers comprising a massive chunk of Mexico's international tourism, some are calling this economic suicide. Others say it's a long overdue act of self-respect. Is this a permanent resetter, a warning shot? Either way, the relationship just got a lot more complicated. Number 3. Chile, the long, narrow nation stretching along South America's western edge, quietly joined the movement in mid-2025 by replacing its visa-free policy for Americans with a digital gatekeeper, a mandatory electronic travel authorization. While that may sound less severe than a full visa requirement, make no mistake, it's a border wall made of code, and Americans are feeling the chill. The initial outcome? A 12% drop in U.S. tourist arrivals during just the first quarter of 2025. That's a significant blow for a nation whose tourism sector plays a vital role in its $320 billion GDP in 2023. From the wine valleys of Casablanca to the dramatic fjords of Patagonia, American tourism dollars once flowed freely. Now, bureaucratic delays and digital hurdles have replaced spontaneity and ease of access. So, what triggered the shift? Chilean officials cite immigration control and digital modernization, but insiders point to a more strategic motive keeping U.S. SESH influence in check while improving surveillance of who's entering and why. This move aligns with broader Latin American trends of asserting digital sovereignty, and it's not accidental timing. Chile's recent push to strengthen ties with China and restructure its visa protocols with reciprocal fairness in mind suggests the U.S. is no longer getting a free pass. The real question is this a sign of things to come across all of Latin America? Chile's decision to technologically tighten its borders may pave the way for similar shifts across the region. For now, one thing's clear: if you're American and want to hike the Atacama Desert or sip Chilean wine at the source, you'd better file your paperwork first. Freedom of movement is no longer guaranteed. Number 2. Costa Rica. Costa Rica has long been the ecotourism crown jewel of Central America, haven for American retirees, remote workers, and thrill seekers alike. But in February 2025, that paradise got a lot harder to reach. The government introduced a mandatory online visa verification process for U.S. citizens, citing heightened concerns over illegal migration, border integrity, and national safety. In plain English, they don't trust American entry anymore. This wasn't a random decision. Reports show a 10% drop in U.S. bookings just months after the policy took effect. And for a country whose $70 billion economy depends heavily on tourism, even a double-digit dip raises alarms. The eco-lodges, jungle retreats, and coastal bees that once catered to American wallets are suddenly facing cancellations, uncertainty, and rising costs. But here's the kicker: Costa Rica seems unapologetic. Officials are doubling down on the change, portraying it as a bold step toward greater national control. But many insiders whisper that it's also about uneven migration dynamics, including rising numbers of undocumented Americans staying longer than allowed. Yes, you read that right. Americans overstaying their welcome. It's a trend that's rarely discussed, but increasingly relevant. So, what does this mean for the future? For years, Americans saw Costa Rica as their tropical escape, hatch visa-free, friendly, and just hours from home. Now, it's an electronic barricade. Is this Costa Rica protecting its sovereignty or responding to deeper undercurrents of tension with the US? Either way, the era of passport privilege in paradise has ended, and the implications are far bigger than just one country. Number 1. New Zealand. Here's the shocker no one saw coming. Even New Zealand, one of the US's oldest allies and most visa-lenient destinations, now revoked its visa-free policy for American citizens. As of early 2025, travelers from the US must apply for an electronic visa before visiting Middle-earth. The reason? A strategic recalibration of entry priorities amid climate pressure, population balancing, and geopolitical shifts. Translation? America just lost one of its last safe zones. The impact was immediate, an 8% drop in American arrivals in the first quarter alone. Tourism is a key engine in New Zealand's $220 billion GDP, and the US has historically been one of its top 3 tourism markets. But now, with new sustainability protocols and immigration controls, even high-spending American travelers are being pushed to the back of the line. Why? Because the global rules are changing, and the US isn't exempt anymore. New Zealand has framed the policy as part of a broader eco-nationalist agenda limiting tourist volume to protect its fragile ecosystems. But insiders whisper of deeper motives, a quiet frustration with US climate policy, foreign influence, and global entitlement. Could it be that the good guy of the Pacific is finally taking sides, just not America's? Let that sink in. When even your closest allies are telling you to fill out a form, wait in line, and maybe get rejected, it's a clear signal the golden age of American travel dominance is over. This isn't just one more hoop to jump through, it's a geopolitical referendum on US privilege abroad, and it's time Americans start paying attention. What we're witnessing isn't just a few annoying rule changes, it's a global reset of American mobility. From the Caribbean to the Andes, from the Pacific to Southeast Asia, country after country is closing the doors that were once wide open. Not because they want fewer tourists, but because they want more control over who enters, how long they stay, and what they represent. In just 1 year, American passport holders went from welcome anytime to please apply first in over 5 key destinations. These aren't rogue states, they're mainstream tourist powerhouses. And they're making a bold statement, US. Privilege is no longer untouchable. The reasons vary: security, migration, diplomacy, even environmental ethics. But the outcome is the same: fewer spontaneous trips, more red tape, and a growing sense that the world is no longer bending for American convenience. So the next time someone says, "I'm just heading down to Mexico," or "I'll pop over to New Zealand," ask this: do you even have a visa anymore? Because in 2025, that's no longer a guarantee. And here's the brutal truth: this is just the beginning. More countries are watching, more policies are brewing. The real question is, how far will this global backlash go? Stay tuned, because the next travel ban might hit even closer to home.